Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 67 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you today, man?
What's up, man? I'm good.
You didn't even wait for me to answer. You asked me a question.
Yeah.
And then you didn't wait for me to answer.
No.
I'm glad you're doing good.
You asked me how I'm doing. I said, what's up, man? I'm good. Then you get your time to respond.
Oh, I'm just messing with you.
I'm riding a sugar buzz.
All right, Gibbs, we got some Patreon supporters. Let's give some shout outs. We had Lisa A.
Just Lisa A, huh?
Just Lisa A.
Lisa A, thank you.
Randy Draheim.
Easy for you to say.
I'm not sure that it is.
Thanks, Drahan.
I don't know. I'm about 72% on that one.
No, that's better than 70. Look at you kicking it up a notch.
So are you telling the folks that 72% is better than 70?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Mr. Obvious, I know.
I was going to say that and you beat me to it.
Yeah.
All right. We had Megan Nash.
Hey, Megan.
Richard Williams.
What's up?
Aaron McCurdy. Rachel Amores Santos.
Are you sure?
I'm not positive. I'm going with my gut.
Okay. It's the best thing to do.
We had Carrie.
Just Carrie?
Just Carrie.
Thanks, Carrie.
Richard Linares.
Thanks, Richard.
And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs.
Yeah, how far are we going back?
As far as we can possibly go. This week we selected Megan Joyce.
Hey, thanks, Megan.
So big shout out to Megan for her longtime support.
That's awesome.
Big shout out to all the new supporters and the people that continue to support us like Megan month after month. It means the world. All right, so at the time that this episode comes out, Gibby and I, if you're listening to it on Sunday, right when it comes out, Gibby and I are probably traveling back from Nashville.
We're rolling.
Unless something went totally awry at CrimeCon.
Oh, like one of us got arrested?
If you got arrested. And then I had to bail you out, but I couldn't bail you out till Monday morning.
Yeah.
And that's why we had to travel back on Monday.
You're a trooper, man.
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
But I do want reimbursed for the bail money.
Well, of course.
This is not going to be like the time that when we go to eat and you say, I forgot my wallet.
It happens.
Take care of me and I'll get you back.
I'll hit you up, man.
And then sometimes there's no get back.
I'm always good, man. What are you trying to do?
That's true. You're a man of your word.
I am a man of many words and of my word.
That is, you're like a dictionary.
I'm something. Some
Thesaurus,
type of dictionary.
Pictionary.
I'd be good.
You're actually more Pictionary
I
than
am.
anything.
I'm a visual type
You do a lot of things with your hands trying to tell me what's going on.
Yeah. Well, right now you just look like a squeezing udders or something from underneath a cow.
Yeah, we should video this because I'm always doing things with my hands that are supposed to correspond to the words that are coming out of my mouth.
They just don't always.
Sometimes they don't. So we're on our way back from CrimeCon. We'll talk about it next week in next week's episode. But
yeah.
I'm assuming, Gibbs, that we met a lot of great people.
Yeah, and they met us.
And they met us.
That's right.
Don't know what they thought about that, but
probably had some Sharpie something drawn on one of us.
Why? Because you passed out drunk, or
somebody probably did something. That's all I'm saying. You're the one that said you wanted to do a bunch of shots.
This weekend is going real bad.
So weekend at Bernie's or yeah,
maybe.
I don't know.
No, that would be the ultimate bad. We don't want a weekend at Bernie situation.
It depends if your Frank the Tank came out or not.
It might. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah,
Well, we'll update everybody the following week.
Maybe I'll be bailing you out for streaking.
We're going streaking. Hey, so at the same time that this episode's coming out, we have an episode on True Crime All the Time. It's on Susan Smith.
Yeah.
Big case. Made national headlines.
Remember it well.
And Susan Smith was the woman that, essentially Gibbs let her car roll into the lake with her young kids inside, and essentially made up a story that, someone had carjacked her. This was a huge, huge case back in the 90s. So make sure you check that out if you haven't listened to it already. We want to give a big shout out to Lindsay Skolaric for her writing and research on this episode.
Absolutely.
really helps us out. So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
We're talking about the case of Amy Mihaljevic, and we're in our home state of Ohio.
Yeah.
Now, we're quite a ways from where we live. This case takes place up in Cleveland. Amy Renee Mihaljevic was born December 11th, 1978. She lived with her parents, Mark and Margaret, in Bay Village, Ohio, which is a suburb of Cleveland.
Yeah.
Pretty nice suburb.
Yeah, I would say so.
And her parents had moved around a little bit, lived in some different cities before settling into Bay Village. Her dad, Mark, worked for one of the auto companies, and because of his job, they had to relocate quite often. They made the move to Bay Village. They wanted to give it a try, thought, you know what, if we don't like it, we'll move back to where we came from. Now, it was said that Amy's mom didn't really like it there, but they ended up staying there anyway. And they had Amy's older brother, Jason, and then later they had Amy. Amy's mom was a working mother, and when Amy got out of school, she would typically get home around 2 p.m. Her brother would get home around 3, and then, like a lot of parents, the parents would get home after work. The week before Amy disappeared, she had received some phone calls from a man, and it was always during this short period of time when she was alone. So in the period of time before her brother got home from school. And this man claimed to work with Amy's mother at her job at the Trading Times. And he told Amy that her mother had just received a promotion, and he made the suggestion that he wanted Amy to help him pick out a gift for her mother to celebrate this promotion. But he also told Amy not to tell anyone about the meeting so that it would be a surprise. And Amy was excited about this. And apparently she hadn't been getting along that well with her mother lately. And she wanted to, do this for her, get this gift. She did tell a couple of her friends about the incident, about this man calling. Her brother knew about it. Although later on he would say that he doesn't remember if Amy told him directly or if he just heard it after the fact. Now, the day that Amy went missing, she had planned to meet this man at the shopping plaza after school. So she rode her bike to school that day. But when school let out, she asked a friend, Olivia, if she could walk with her. And Olivia thought that this was odd because Amy never walked that way. But the two took off together, walking towards the plaza. As they were walking, Amy told Olivia that she was meeting a friend at the plaza. And when they arrived, Olivia watched Amy walk away towards the Baskin-Robbins ice cream place. This was shortly after 2 p.m. There was also a group of fifth grade boys at the plaza. One of the boys yelled at Amy, but she ignored him. And the boy said that she was twirling around a pole outside of the ice cream shop. There was another girl that noticed the boys and thought that they may have been bothering Amy. So this girl kind of kept her eye on them. She wanted to make sure that Amy was okay. Around 2:45 p.m., this girl sees a man approach Amy. He's wearing a beige windbreaker with plaid lining, khakis, and a button-up shirt. She described the man as having thick, bushy hair that stopped right above his eyes and that he wore glasses. So she watches this man walk up to Amy and he puts a hand on her back. And then the man leans down as if he's whispering something into Amy's ear. So all of this comes from the girl at the plaza. Then he puts his arm around Amy and he leads her away. Now this girl assumed that the man was Amy's father, picking her up after school. She had never met Amy's father, didn't know what he looked like. So there were a couple of eyewitnesses, mainly kids, that see Amy that day at the plaza, but there's nobody that sees her get into a vehicle with this man. They only see the two walking away. Amy's brother Jason gets home from school just after 3, and he called his mom to let her know that Amy was not there. right? That would have been unusual, I would think.
I think it would be extremely unusual.
And Amy's mom, Margaret, had a weird feeling. And I have received calls like that. Gibbs, you've probably received calls like that. Now, the difference in our cases is that it's not been anything, but I've had those strange feelings before where something's not right. I actually had one a few weeks ago when my daughter didn't come home from school when I thought she was supposed to. I had forgotten that she had some type of band practice or something after school.
Yeah.
And it freaked me out.
It does, man. It
to
really
the point
does.
where, I called my wife and I said, something's not right. Our daughter's not home. And she said, it's because she has band practice, you idiot. But that's happened to me, on multiple occasions.
Yeah. The panic sets in.
So Margaret gets ready to go home. She wants to get there to make sure everything's okay. And as she's packing up her things at work, her phone rings. And it's Amy on the other end of the line. She asks Amy where she is, where she's been, and Amy told her a lie. She told her that she had been at choir tryouts. And Margaret would later say that Amy was very brief with her on the phone. And we all know what that's like, Gibbs, when your kids don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, you can't.
Or other people.
Yeah, you just can't get answers out of them.
And they're trying to get you off the phone as quick as they can.
And you just sit there shaking your head after the call going, what was that all about?
What did I do?
Yeah.
Why don't you want to talk to me? But police are going to think that this call was made very shortly after Amy was abducted. Margaret leaves work just after she gets off the phone with Amy. But when she gets home, Amy's brother Jason says he hasn't seen her. She has not been home all day. So Margaret drives to the school and finds Amy's bike still there. Starts asking around, but no one has seen Amy. And she doesn't wait a whole lot of time, Gibbs. It's about 5:30 that she calls police and reports Amy as missing. And the police actually take this very seriously, very quickly. And I'm not sure that's the norm all the time, right? You hear it all the time where police say, well, we can't do anything. It hasn't been long enough.
Right.
It's only been a couple hours. She'll come home. You hear that all the time, but apparently they sprung into action pretty quickly in this case.
I mean, she is 10, so I think if they were older, then maybe they'd wait a little bit longer, but 10...
No, that is a good point. They probably took it more seriously because of her age. So Bay Village police, they took this very personally. The shopping plaza was directly across the street from the police station. And that day that Amy was abducted, pretty much at the same time that they believe she was abducted, they had all the police there taking a new staff photo. So this didn't sit well with them, that this happened essentially under their noses right across the street from them. So there's Detective Spetzel was the detective that day, and matter of fact is still the detective on this case, has been working it from day one. He had actually visited Amy's class that day and had given a talk to her class about stranger danger. How many times have we talked about stranger danger?
Many times.
I mean, that was the thing, right? But by the next morning, the FBI had gotten involved. They started to investigate this as a kidnapping case, probably on the fact that most kidnapping cases end up crossing state lines, which would make it federal.
Sure.
But that's pretty quick for the FBI to get involved.
Yeah.
So the FBI and the local police, they set up command centers in the town hall. And you had a lot of volunteers coming forward, trying to help in any way they could. You had people taking calls, posting flyers, and they posted flyers everywhere. And not just around Bay Village. I mean, they were going to neighboring towns, posting flyers as far as they could. And the news of Amy's disappearance spread pretty quickly. And it hit the national level pretty quickly.
Now, do you remember that?
I to be honest with you, I don't. It might have been the fact of, when this took place. We're in 1989, and I was in high school in 1989. I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to the
media.
news.
Yeah.
No, I really wasn't. So I don't remember this one very well from back then. Now, I do know, Gibbs, that the case of Amy Mihaljevic was one of the first profiled on America's Most Wanted. And I did watch a lot of America's Most Wanted, but probably a few years later than this.
Yeah.
So you have all these volunteers. You've got search parties. The police are interviewing everybody they can get their hands on. And they would search for Amy's body for 104 days before it was discovered. And it was a woman jogging in Ashland County. She noticed what she thought was a mannequin on the side of the road, but it turned out to be the body of Amy Mihaljevic.
Yeah, I mean, just how sad is that, you know? I mean, the body had to be decomposed pretty heavy at that point.
It was badly decomposed. When she was found, she had on the same clothes that she had on the day that she went missing. But authorities figured out that her clothes had been taken off and put back on. Amy had suffered from blunt force trauma to the head, and she had also been stabbed 3 or 4 times in the neck. And the autopsy revealed that she died from loss of blood, but could have lived up to 30 minutes after the trauma and the stabbing. And that's hard to take. I mean, that's hard to imagine, Gibbs. An innocent 10-year-old girl fighting for her life for what could have been up to 30 minutes.
I can't even imagine how scared she was from what she just went through, but still just laying there. I can't even fathom, I mean, I got a niece, and I've talked about it before, and she's just a year older than that, and she's at my house right now, and I can't imagine somebody that young, that aged, going through all the bad stuff, and then for that to happen and just to be laying there, with nobody to comfort, nobody.
Helpless. There's nothing she can do. I think it does make it tough for us because we've had girls. We have a lot of girls in our family. I don't know, when we do these types of cases, Gibbs, don't you think it's tough? Not that it would be easy if it was a 10-year-old boy. I don't know, for some reason, I guess because I have girls, these really hit me hard.
Yep, definitely.
Police believe that she was killed and dumped within 24 hours of being abducted. And it was pretty obvious to them that the actual murder did not take place in that field where she was found. It took place somewhere else. So we mentioned that she was found clothed, but that police figured out that she had been redressed. And during the autopsy, it was revealed that Amy had been sexually assaulted. But when they found Amy's body, there were things that were missing. She was missing a pair of turquoise horse earrings that she had been wearing, the horse riding boots that she had on that day, a denim backpack, and a binder that read Buick Best in Class. And that was a binder that was given to her by her father. And to this day, none of these items have ever been recovered.
Search for Amy has lasted for 4 months. This picture of the Bay Village girl has been placed in every public place possible with the hope that someone, somewhere, would have information leading to her whereabouts.
It involves the kidnapping of a 10-year-old girl.
Nationally televised programs profiled the abduction. And last Tuesday, authorities announced what seemed to be at the time a ray of hope, a reported sighting at a Tulsa, Oklahoma shopping mall. But the tragic end was closer to home.
A female jogger was jogging this morning at approximately 7:30, and she spotted something in the field and went off the field and checked, and it was a body.
Throughout the day, federal agents combed the area searching for evidence that might provide some clues about who may have done this to any youngster. And late this afternoon, authorities confirmed the news that we had hoped that we would never have to hear.
The Cuyahoga County Coroner's Office examined the body. That body has been positively identified as that of Amy Mihaljevic.
Dental records and fingerprints were used to confirm the coroner's report. They say Amy's death was a homicide.
I can only say that there were stab wounds to the left side of the neck.
Can you say how many?
No, I can't say that.
Any possibility of sexual molestation?
I can't say that at this time.
35 FBI agents were assigned to the Mihaljevic case. 100,000 man-hours had been logged, and practically everyone involved in the investigation were clinging to hope that Amy would be found alive.
Well, it certainly isn't what we were all, and every one of you two, were hoping for.
And you can hear it, Gibbs, in some of the voices of the investigators. I mean, you think about it. 4 months, 104 days, all the man hours that were spent searching.
Yeah.
And it just didn't end up the way that obviously they hoped it did. You heard the police officer say that.
Sure.
Now, as part of this investigation, Gibbs, the authorities were able to make a composite sketch of the man that abducted Amy, and it was based on the children that were in the plaza that day that had seen this man with Amy. Then later on the very day that her body was discovered, there was a man who saw someone that he thought matched the description of the composite sketch.
Because he was bent down, so I couldn't see him that well.
Larry Schuster has told the FBI an amazing story. On the day Amy's body was found, Schuster says he saw a suspicious-looking stranger drive back and forth near the discovery site. And he claims the driver looked very much like the police composite sketch of Amy's abductor.
As I was leaving, coming up towards 224, that's when I seen him going back down again. Back up, I think he was coming up this way to see what was going on and see if anybody found him, found the girl.
Amy Mihaljevic is one girl this community will never forget. As a card on the flowers proclaims, from the people of New London, Ohio, we're sorry, Amy.
So you just don't know about that, Gibbs. Did that guy really see the person that abducted and murdered Amy? Or was it just a guy driving back and forth that, he thought kind of looked like the composite sketch?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard telling. It really is. I mean, it's just...
Because that could be the type of behavior that a guilty person might do. We know that. We've read about that.
Yeah. I mean,
they would be interested in the crime scene. They would be, wondering if somebody had found the body yet, and they might drive back and forth
to see
what's going on. So there was some DNA recovered from the crime scene, along with some yellowish gold fibers that were found on Amy's body. But the DNA has not been matched, obviously, to any suspects. If it had, we wouldn't be talking about it on True Crime All Time Unsolved. We'd be talking about it on TCAT. But this was a massive investigation. Police followed thousands of leads. Dozens of suspects took lie detector tests, and only one of these refused. It was a local attorney. I mean, to this day, over 20,000 interviews have been done regarding this case. And the list of suspects is over 20.
That's a large number.
It is. This is one of the biggest searches in Ohio since the disappearance of Beverly Potts. But with all of that, all the man hours, the FBI coming in, everything that's happened, no arrests have ever been made. All right, Gibbs. So I think from here, we need to get into some of the leads, some of the possible suspects in this case. And the first person that we'll talk about was a man by the name of Strunak. He was actually volunteering at the command center. And this was a guy that asked a lot of questions about the case. He was overly interested and involved. And this is something that you and I have talked about before. That sometimes draws the attention of police because there have been a lot of cases where the person that has committed the crime does that, right? They want to know what's going on. They want to be involved and get a rush from being right next to the officers that are looking into the crime that they committed. I guess this guy donated a lot of paper to help make flyers, and he sent Amy's mother, Margaret, 2 decorative pins in the mail. One was as a gift for Margaret, and the other one was for Amy when she returned.
Okay.
Now, it was later discovered that the paper and the pins were stolen from the place where this guy worked. It was found out that he had a criminal history and he was asked to leave. And authorities, police, FBI, they questioned this guy a number of times. Finding out that the period of time prior to Amy's body being discovered was a rough time for him. He had broken up with his girlfriend. He was broke. He had what was called unbearable psoriasis. Just 2 weeks after Amy's body was found, this guy took gasoline, mixed it with Coke, and gulped it down one morning. And then he went to work.
Wow. Doesn't sound like... I'd rather have the Laverne and Shirley milk and Pepsi.
I'd rather have milk and Pepsi as opposed to that. So he goes to work, finishes his shift, I think, comes home that evening, slips into a coma, and dies 3 days later. He did leave a suicide note, but it didn't mention anything about Amy. And like I said, he was interrogated a number of times, including interrogations by the FBI, but he didn't admit to anything during these interrogations. And I think it's widely believed that Spetzel and other FBI agents who were close to the case, they don't think it was him. They don't think he had anything to do with Amy's disappearance and murder. And the next person to talk about is a man by the name of Richard Folbert. And it was on Sunday, October 13th, 2002, at a Catholic church in Fairview Park, that a shaggy-haired man stood up in the pew and began yelling. And people would later say that this is what he said: "May I have your attention, please? My name is Richard Allen Folbert. People know me as Satan. I killed Amy Mihaljevic."
That's a statement.
That is a heck of a statement. He was immediately grabbed by some off-duty police officers, taken into custody. He was interviewed by Detective Spetzel. Folbert was 42 years old, and it turns out that he was schizophrenic, and he had been off his medication for 3 weeks. And Folbert believed that Satan was framing him for Amy's murder to silence him before he could spread the word that the world was coming to an end. But ultimately, Spetzel concluded that this guy had nothing to do with Amy's murder. But still to this day, I think this man believes, Gibbs, that he was responsible for Amy's death.
Wow.
And on another note, it was also said that he believes Hillary Clinton is the Antichrist. So make of that what you will.
Yeah.
Obviously, Gibbs, it's not funny. This man has a mental illness, but so strange that to this day, apparently he still thinks that he did it. We talked about some of the things that were missing from where Amy's body was found. The horse earrings, horse riding boots. Amy had a huge love for horses. She took riding lessons at a local farm. And the next person of interest, Gibbs, that I want to talk about is the son of the owner of the farm where Amy took her riding lessons. And this was a man by the name of Harold Bound. He was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic. He was a veteran of Vietnam. And apparently he lived above the garage, and he helped out by cleaning out the stables. And there were some other girls that were interviewed by authorities that rode with Amy, and they described this man as creepy.
Yeah.
I think one of the girls said they thought he was the boogeyman.
The boogeyman, huh?
The boogeyman.
Well, that's pretty creepy.
So I apparently he did creep them out. He was questioned by the FBI and apparently even took a lie detector test, but they never arrested him. They never held him. So obviously they didn't have anything on him, but he couldn't provide much in the way of an alibi. And even his own brother said that he came home really late the night of Amy's disappearance. Now, I don't know what that means, but this man checked himself into the mental ward at the VA hospital within a week of Amy's disappearance. So the timing of that is strange. it was said that he was having uncontrollable bouts of violence. And then I want to talk about this guy Gibbs named Frank Dienes. So let me play this clip and then we'll talk about it.
Bay Village Police first questioned Frank Dienes in the Amy Mihaljevic case 16 years ago. They questioned him back in 1995, and they're looking at him again. Also tonight, Frank Dienes and Joe Kopp didn't just meet, they go way back. Bay Village Police confirmed today that Frank Dienes first appeared on their radar in the Amy Mihaljevic murder investigation back in 1995. They got a tip that Dienes looked like a composite sketch created after Amy's disappearance. One of the sketches then, and Dienes today. Dienes was questioned but never charged in the Mihaljevic murder. Police say they were getting thousands of tips at the time. Now they are looking at Dienes again because of stories that his neighbors are sharing about Dienes and Joe Kopp, the man he's accused of killing. Stories that some people call rumors.
He said that Frank's the one who murdered Amy.
We also have learned that Kopp and Dienes knew each other for decades, long before Joe Kopp moved into the Dienes house on Oakwood Drive, where he was found buried in the backyard. Frank and Joe were actually neighbors just a mile away here on Rustic Oval in Seven Hills way back in 1990. This woman, who didn't want her face on camera, said Kopp was warning people about Dienes for years. And this neighbor, Greg Wilkes, said Kopp told him the same story in the 90s, claiming Dienes killed Amy Mihaljevic.
He said he even went to the Seven Hills cops, and because the Seven Hills cops didn't like him, to that effect, that they didn't, respond to him.
How much anyone believed Kopp is unclear. Kopp's own family says he was dealing with a mental health issue.
Stories, all kinds of stories.
Greg Rusnak runs Andy's Shoe Repair in the Bay Village Plaza where Amy Mihaljevic was last seen in 1989. Greg worked at the store back then, and he has seen many tips and stories come and go over the years.
You don't know what to believe anymore. It's hard, and sometimes the puzzle pieces can be made to fit. What's happening now, obviously, is going to take a lot more time to sort out.
Bay Village Police say they never heard from Joe Kopp all those years or from anyone else about his story or allegations until recently. Now, Seven Hills Police have not called us back tonight, but we did hear from Dienes' attorney, Eric Nemechek, who told me today that talk linking his client to Amy Mihaljevic remains a rumor.
So this one's kind of strange, Gibbs, because they questioned this guy, Frank, in 1995. And then in 2011, he's arrested for killing this man named Joe Kopp, who apparently was going around town saying that he had killed Amy Mihaljevic. And from what I understand, they found Joe Kopp's body behind Frank Dienes' house. And he ends up getting convicted for the murder of Joe Kopp and goes away to prison. But that was 7 years ago. And 7 years ago, because he was going into prison, right, they would have his DNA. And I had a hard time finding stuff about it, but obviously they would have been able to match the DNA and they would have solved the case if it had been this Frank Dienes. Now, in 2006, it was discovered that Amy Mihaljevic was not the only girl who received telephone calls similar to the ones that we know Amy did. Because in the weeks leading up to Amy's abduction, there were multiple girls in the area that would later say, they too had received phone calls from men saying that their mothers had received promotions and offering to help them buy her a gift. And the connection is that all of these girls had parents who worked, and so they were home alone for a period of time before their parents got home. And they received the calls just as Amy did during this window of time. And there was actually one other girl that left her house to go meet this man, but a neighbor stepped in and asked this girl where she was going. The girl told the neighbor that she was meeting a friend to buy a gift for her mother. And this man, the neighbor, he felt that something wasn't right. And he asked the girl to stay with him until her parents got home. So what about that? I mean, this neighbor steps in, senses Gibbs that something's not right with this situation. he may have saved this little girl's life.
Yeah, I think he probably did.
Now, the other connection is all of these girls were around the same age as Amy was back then. They had a fairly similar look. So you would have to assume that these phone calls were made by the person that killed Amy, and that if so, this killer had a type. And was it that he was making phone calls and he kept doing it until he was able to get one of these girls to come meet him?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me.
Spooky. It's eerie. So after they discovered this in 2006, authorities started looking at their suspect list to find somebody that had some type of connection to all of these girls, was familiar with Bay Village, was familiar with Ashland County where Amy's body was found. And there was one man that fit this criteria, and his name was Dean Runkle. So we're going to spend some time talking about this man. You know, he was a science teacher in Vermillion, Ohio from 67 to 87, and then later on in Amherst, Ohio from 89 to 2003. And Dean Runkle had won an award for starting a science fair at the junior high that he was teaching at. And he actually built a zoo almost in his classroom. And you can actually go on YouTube. There is a news segment, Gibbs, of this teacher, and they're talking about how he won this award, and you can see him in the classroom doing his thing. But he had all kinds of animals in the classroom, and he would call his students his assistants, and many of them stayed after school, even came in on weekends to help take care of the animals, clean up the cages. I mean, at the time, this guy was considered like, you know, this unbelievable teacher.
Yeah.
Who was able to create strong bonds with his students. But in 1987, he resigned from the junior high in Vermillion for what he told people at the school were health reasons. But after he resigned, he moved in with his parents who lived in New London, only a couple of miles from where Amy's body was discovered. He was interviewed by the FBI in 2002. Then in 2003, the laws in Ohio changed, and every teacher and school employee were required to have fingerprints on file. Now, they had been fingerprinting teachers for longer than that, but Runkle had been a teacher for so long that apparently he never had to supply his fingerprints before that year, before that started. And when they told him that he would have to submit to fingerprinting, he quit. And apparently he was a year away from retiring and getting his pension. So that is very odd. I think a lot of people think that is very odd. Apparently he up and moved to Key West, lived on the streets in Key West for a while, and then got a job at Wendy's as a manager.
Well, Key West is like known for a lot of homeless.
Well, I guess if you're going to live on the street, Key West probably not the worst place, is it?
Nah, but it's definitely well known for a lot of homeless, just like, San Diego. So, I mean, if you go down to San Diego, you see a lot of homeless. But I mean, one of the best places, if there's no good place to be homeless, but
right.
Weather-wise,
San Diego and maybe Key West.
Key West, I mean, you don't have to worry about getting chilly at night.
Have you ever been to Key West?
Oh, yeah, several times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like Key West a lot.
Yeah, so late at night after you're done at the establishment that you're at, if you walk down, you see a lot of the homeless sleeping in the doorway openings to commercial places.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Along the main drag there?
Yeah. Oh, that Duval Street, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't see that. We were only there during the day. So getting back to Runkle, it leads us into talking about James Renner. And a lot of true crime fans know who James Renner is. He's an author. He's looked into a lot of cases. He wrote a great book about the disappearance and murder of Amy Mihaljevic. But he's also, looked into and written about Maura Murray and a lot of the famous cases. He's very well known. He's been on a lot of podcasts, and if you're into true crime, you probably know who James Renner is. He started looking into Dean Runkle, and Renner contacted a lot of former students to ask them about Runkle, and some of the students thought he was great, but there were some that remembered things that were, let's say, not so what you would call appropriate. Some had even made complaints about the teacher that never really went anywhere. And it was alleged that he was caught more than once with a student in his Gold Grand Prix. There were a number of students that said that they were invited to go to his apartment. And Renner discovered something about the girls who had received the phone calls. I think he was really trying to find a connection there. And what he discovered was that they had all visited this nature center in Bay Village. That was a place that Runkle was known to have frequented as well in the weeks leading up to Amy's disappearance. So I guess, Gibbs, James Renner actually flew down to Key West and he found Dean Runkle and he confronted him.
And had that conversation.
And Runkle says to him, "I know who you are." I guess his sister had told him that Renner had been, asking about him, and he didn't want to talk. But Renner doesn't just leave, right? He keeps pressing on, and he does get Dean Runkle to answer a few questions. And Runkle admits to knowing that he's probably at the top of the suspect list, but says that he didn't leave Ohio because of Amy. He left because of health reasons. He also said that he answered all the FBI's questions. He took a lie detector test. And I think at one point, Renner just comes out and asks him, did you kill Amy Mihaljevic? And Runkle says apparently that he had nothing to confess to. Didn't say he didn't do it. He just said he didn't have anything to confess to. So we fast forward to 2016. The FBI releases some new evidence to the public, and it's some curtains and a blanket that had been found by Amy's body, linked to her, confirmed to be evidence in the case. And you and I have talked about this a lot, Gibbs, right? There's always some stuff that's held back.
Yeah, I mean, they do that on purpose.
Sure.
Yeah.
But at some point, a lot of time has gone by. I'm assuming they made the decision that let's give this a shot. Let's get this out there, see if it, generates anything. So these curtains were apparently green in color, and they were handmade from some type of quilt. The blanket was just a plain beige blanket. And the way that they matched both of these to Amy was through dog hairs from the family dog, Amy's dog, that were found on the two items.
We're trying to get this thing solved and really like to do that before I retire.
That's why retired FBI agent Phil Torsney is here. He's working with Bay Village Police now solely on this case. I've learned that the tips are still coming in and that people are being interviewed and re-interviewed in connection with this mystery that has haunted this town for nearly 3 decades.
I was doing some interviews and work yesterday, which are based on some new information and review of old information.
Torsney was among a team of FBI agents who arrived within hours of Amy's disappearance with hopes of finding her. Now he is committed to finding her killer.
We're trying to use some of those new tools that we have now, forensic tools, laboratory tools, reviewing parts of the old case and trying to match up different things that may have not meant something 28 years ago.
Police believe these items could lead to Amy's killer. Turquoise horsehead earrings, black studded boots, and a black Buick binder with the words "Best in Class" on it. They have never been found. Both men told me they believe that this case will be solved.
I think he's lucky, and I'm hoping his luck runs out.
So they're still working this case, Gibbs. I mean, they haven't given up on it, just like a lot of unsolved cases that we talk about. And I'll tell you what, after the events that occurred recently that we talked about last week in the East Area Rapist, original Night Stalker, Golden State Killer case, I'm not going to call anything unsolvable anymore. I honestly was flabbergasted when they arrested that guy. So I'm just going to assume everything is solvable and that it will be solved at some point in time.
Yeah. I mean, anything's possible.
No, it is. And they've got some good clues, right? We've talked about it. The DNA. You just heard them again talk about the items that were missing that they knew should have been with Amy.
Yeah.
Something happened to those. And we know from a lot of research that we do, killers like to keep trophies.
Yeah. Somebody's got a pair of turquoise earrings.
And maybe those will turn up.
Yeah.
You always have the deathbed confessions. You always have a relative that finds something maybe after a person dies, and that's going to break it wide open. I don't know. We talked about some people that were on police and FBI radar. I think most of them you can probably dismiss. I think the Dean Runkle aspect is very interesting. I don't think there's any doubt, not putting words in anybody's mouth, that James Renner is very high on that individual.
Sure.
You know, the connections that have been uncovered. And we talked about the gold fibers that were found on Amy's body. There has been some talk that they could have possibly come from what we described as this gold Grand Prix that the teacher drove. The problem was, by the time I think the Renner got involved and was really seriously looking at the teacher, the car had been scrapped and there was no way to, make that match. And again, I don't know if he had anything to do with it or not. There's just some very strange things about him and some of the things he did, quitting so abruptly when you're about ready to retire and essentially giving up a pension.
Yeah. I mean, it's sure doesn't look good.
It seems awful strange.
Yeah.
But again, you have a lot of people that have fond memories of him as a teacher, said he was great. A lot of people even said he was the catalyst for them becoming, a veterinarian or a biologist or, something like that.
Yeah. Well, there's always two sides to the story.
There is. And again, that's why everything's alleged. And I mean, obviously they don't have anything on any of these people strong enough to do anything with, or they would have already done it.
Whoever abducted and murdered Amy placed a phone call to her house a couple weeks before that to set up that meeting. And they called Amy and tricked her into thinking that she was going shopping for her mom. A lot of times, these criminals, these sickos out there that do these things, they use the similar pattern to entice additional victims. So maybe there's another case out there that has some similarities to Amy's case, and maybe that'll help bring resolution to both of those cases. Look at this little girl who only lived until she was 10 years old and met this horrible death. And so we're asking people to take a look at it. So we're sending it out, and wherever it latches on, we'll take it.
Jar someone's memory. Someone could have known something or remembered something and put something together. I mean, stranger things have happened, and I think that you should never give up. Never, trying to find justice for this little girl.
I think the woman in that clip, Gibbs, makes a very interesting comment about the fact that, and we know they do, right? These killers a lot of times have an MO, and they like to stick to that.
Yeah.
So it's very possible that this person could have done something very similar, maybe moved and did it somewhere else where it's not been connected with this one.
And that's very possible.
Yeah.
Strongly possible.
It really is. And if that one is solved, it may lead to this one solving. So just going back to, is it solvable? They're all solvable now in my book.
Yeah, I believe that too, especially after the latest things that we've went through.
But that's it. That is the case of the disappearance, the murder of Amy Mihaljevic. It's a sad story.
It really is.
A lot of people are familiar with this case. It was national, but it was really big in Ohio because obviously it occurred here in Ohio.
Right.
So I don't know. I have a lot of renewed faith in some of these cases that we talk about being solved.
Sure.
All right, Gibbs, we've got some voicemails.
Let's do it.
G'day, Mike and Gibby.
This is Austin calling from Melbourne. Just wanted to let you know how much I enjoy your podcast. I know you've been getting a lot of calls from down under lately, so I just wanted you to know that's how you do an Australian accent. Get it right.
There you go.
That one cracked me up because I'll be honest. When I first started listening to it,
Yeah.
I thought, man, I don't know. It doesn't really sound Australian.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he switched it. No, actually, it wasn't a bad Australian accent.
Yeah, I give it a 7.
I give it compared to who? Compared to you, it's a 12.
Why you got to compare to me? I just said the overall accent scale, I give it a 7.
No, I thought that was very creative.
That was funny. Yeah, it was good.
Hi, this message is from Mike Ferguson. This is Meg Weaver. I believe that you delivered takeout taxi to me back in 1993, and I was definitely missing some nuggets and some fries. I would like those returned immediately. Thank you. Have a good day.
That one actually cracked me up. I got a big chuckle listening to that one.
Yeah, that's
kids.
funny.
I don't remember what episode it was that I told my takeout taxi story. I don't even remember if it was on TCAT or TCAT Unsolved, to be honest with you.
I remember you saying it, though.
I remember talking about
you food stealing son of a...
So I really got a big kick out of that. So Meg, if it was me, I owe you dinner.
Come see him at CrimeCon. He'll take care of you.
Yep, I'll buy you dinner at CrimeCon or call Gibby. He'll take care of you. Gibby takes care of all my tabs.
Yeah.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. My name is Ashley, and I'm from Florida. The other day you were talking about degrees of separation or like run-ins with criminals that we've talked about on the podcast and things like that. And it reminded me of one of my most embarrassing moments. One time I met a guy whose name was Randy Yates. And being a true crime addict, of course I said, oh, like Andrea Yates, the woman who drowned her kids in the bathtub. Ha ha. And he said, yeah, that was my brother's wife. And I kind of laughed him off thinking he was kidding. And the joke was on me because he wasn't kidding. So that's one of my most embarrassing true crime moments. I just want to share that story with you guys. I enjoy listening to your podcast. Thanks. Stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Well, not only did you share it with us, you just shared it with about 1.5 million people. So, embarrassing moment number 2 for you.
No, it was just for me and you, Gibbs.
Yeah, that was cute.
But I'm always amazed. I think I've said this before, but I'm always amazed. I get messages and emails and DMs. I don't even know what all the words are for all the social media that we...
Private messaging. We'll just say that.
Where people have these stories where, they have these unbelievable connections to famous cases.
Yeah.
I remember where we were doing the Beauty Queen episode on True Crime All the Time, and the woman emailed me, and that was, where Wilder was... trying to pick up these women. I can't remember if it was at the mall, and he was telling them that, he would take pictures of them and
I remember
help
that.
them get famous or whatever it was. She was at that mall, remembers talking to him.
She could have been one.
Even remembers him giving her his card, and she threw it away in the trash and got the heck out of there. But yeah, I'm always amazed by those stories of whatever the degree of separation is, to some of these unbelievable cases we talk about.
Hey, Mike and Mike, Fergie and Gibby. I love both of your podcasts, Unsolved, True Crime All the Time, and Criminology, of course. Hey, I just want to give you guys a shout out. You are my favorite podcast. You make me through the day. And just keep up the great work. I love all your info. I know I've emailed you guys a couple times on Facebook, and you guys respond real quickly, and I love it. Okay? Stay safe and keep your own time ticking. Click, click.
Would that be the gun clicking?
I don't know what that is.
I just.
But, we get that a lot, Gibbs.
Yeah.
And it never fails to make me feel really good.
Yeah.
Whether it's a voicemail or an email or a message, and they may just say, hey, Love what you're doing. Gets me through the day. Whatever it is.
Right.
Makes us feel good about what we're doing.
Yeah, it does. So I appreciate that call.
Appreciate it a lot. And we appreciate everyone listening. But that's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.